Hi guys, I'm Kate from Linocut Studio and I'm an illustrator and printmaker. I love how hands-on it is and how you can take a simple design and turn it into like a really cool print that you can use over and over again on so many different things. And I just think it's really rewarding. So I'm excited to share that with you guys. So before we start carving anything, we're going to need some tools. You'll need a pencil and paper to draw on, or you can draw directly onto the block. You'll need some lino. There's a few different types that you can use. You'll need some carving tools. You'll need some ink. You can either use a water-based or an oil-based ink. Oil-based is better for fabric projects, whereas the water-based is better for paper. You could also just use an ink pad and dab it onto the stamp like that. I like to use it for smaller projects. If you're rolling your ink, you'll also need a brayer, a baron to apply pressure, so that's a baron, or you can just use the back of a spoon or your hands. You'll also need some tracing paper or baking paper to transfer your design. And if you're rolling out your ink, you'll need an inking plate. So I just use like an old piece of plastic or glass from an old picture frame. You also need some paper to print on. The finer the paper, the smoother the paper, the easier it will be to print your design. The more textured the paper, the more even you'll have to be with your pressure. Some extra things that you might need are a Stanley knife, cutting mat, masking tape, and something to hold your lino in place. Those last four things aren't essential, but they do come in handy. So now we're going to talk about drawing our design. It's always best, if you've never tried Linocut before, just to start with something simple. This is one of the first ones I ever did. So just really simple kind of design, but quite effective. I ended up using this one to make a bunch of cards like this. So when I am drawing my design for printing, I usually start with just a lead pencil drawing like that. And that's usually all I need. I'll then transfer that onto my block and start carving. Sometimes if I'm not sure how it's going to turn out, I might go over the design in pen just so I can see what it'll look like in black and white. So that's the same design. And then once I've done that, I might even go back to my original drawing and adjust a few things and see how it looks. But you kind of want to do all of that refining before you actually transfer your image onto the block.
So when I'm transferring the image, I like to tape it down to my work surface and then tape my baking paper over the top. And this just stops it from moving around as I'm trying to trace it, because we want to try and get the design as accurate as possible. And then I'll just take a pencil and start tracing over the design. So now that we've finished tracing our image, we can take off the masking tape and lift up our baking paper. And what you want to do now is just turn it over, because we want to make sure that lead side is the side that goes onto the lino. So we'll lay it down and line it up nicely. And then I just like to rub over it with the blunt end of a pencil. I find that works really well. Just make sure it's got like a metal end rather than a razor on the end. Alternatively, you can finally trace over it with the sharp end, but it takes a lot longer, and I find this other way works really well. And there it is. So the first thing I do before carving is just cut off any of the excess lino with a Stanley knife. So for carving, it's always good to go in first with a small V-shaped gouge, just something that's going to be really good for fine details because you're working on your lines first, and it's always best to carve away from you just for safety reasons. Once I've done all my outlines, I'll then go in with a larger gouge just to remove any of the excess lino, and then I'll go on to carve the rest of my details. So now our design is ready to print. So first of all, what I'm going to do is just take some water-based printing ink because I'm just printing on paper. And I'm just going to put a small amount of that on the top of my printing plate. Next, I'm going to take my brayer and I'm just going to get a small sort of dab of that on the brayer, not the whole amount, and then just start rolling it out on my printing plate. When you're rolling, it's best to roll out the ink both vertically and horizontally just to get a good even spread. You'll also want to do the same thing when you're rolling the ink onto your lino block as well. You'll know the ink is the right consistency when you hear a sort of like sizzly, like tacky sizzly sound. I've just included a little audio file so you can hear what that sounds like. And now we're ready to roll it onto our block. So you want to make sure it gets an even coat and you want to roll it vertically and horizontally again. Now I'm going to lay my paper over the top. When I'm doing prints, I like to put another piece of paper underneath. I'll show you guys a photo of that. And that just helps me line up my design. And then with the Baron, you want to go over your design with an even pressure. I usually like to do small circles. You can also check how your design is printing halfway through just so you can kind of peel up the corner and check it. Once you've pulled the print, because this is your first test print, it's always good to have a look at it and see if there's anything that needs fixing. I can see a couple of the edges and that bit there in the middle, I've kind of missed carving that out. So that's why it's always good to do a test instead of printing onto good paper straight away.
Alright, so I fixed up a couple of areas in the print that I wasn't happy with and did a few more tests, and now I have my final print that I'm happy with. I've also just signed and dated it at the bottom. I like to do that on my prints. You don't have to, but it's a nice little touch. So now that you've got your final print, you can start to get a bit creative about how you use it. There's so many things that you can make with these finished prints. You can do cards, you can do just the art prints like I showed you before. You can print onto t-shirts, tea towels, you can make little journals. You can do what I did as well and make some bookmarks. There's so many different ways that you can use these things. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you really enjoyed this workshop. If you'd like to see more from me, you can find me at inkwood.studio on Instagram, or check out my website at inkwoodstudio.com. If you have any questions about the video or just want to get in touch with me, you can either slide into my DMs, comment on my photos, or email me at helloinkwoodstudio@gmail.com. I'm also going to post the video on my own IGTV as well if you'd like to watch it again. For the duration of the virtual market, I'm going to be offering free Canada-wide shipping in the shop on my website. Also, if you really like the print from the workshop, I'm going to have 10 of these available in the shop as well. Some new things coming this week. I'm probably going to add some more of the journals that I make in a different print. And Nina from Pemberton Bag Co and I are working on a really cool zipper pouch project that we hope to launch soon. So stay tuned for some more exciting things.